Welcome to the fifth and final article that I'm doing for this assignment, and as the title suggests, this is my fifth and final article I've chosen to look at as far as this assignment goes, and it's pretty clear what it's about: that children with a disability are being excluded from education, and I came across it basically because I needed a fifth article and I did some Googling. I'm passionate about education and disability, so it was a pretty natural area for me to end up in. I don't exactly know when this article was released, but my search parameters were only for articles that have been released within the last 12 months, so I know that it's there. I'll speak of the imagery first, I think, here. Yeah, the imagery just looks like a mainstream school where everybody's getting along. I can't really comment on it much. I've spent most of my time in specialist schools, and ours certainly look a little bit different to that. My initial reaction when I read through this article was one of sympathy, and it was one of sympathy not for the students of these disabled students. It was more for the schools that are really copying it with articles like this that are being put out there. And I did some research on some of the other articles, and I'm going to roll down to the bottom here, and I really feel like down the bottom here it states, children with disabilities risk being misdiagnosed in order to receive school funding, how schools avoid enrolling disabled children. So obviously all the articles that are related to this topic, according to this website, are all anti-schools. So that puts me off guard to begin with, but I actually couldn't justify reading any of them based solely on the titles. So it may seem a little harsh, but I work in a special school setting, so that's the context that I'm coming from here. But I do spend some time in mainstream classrooms, and I see many great classroom teachers in mainstream schools really struggle, despite really good intentions. They really struggle to provide to the diverse needs of all the students in their classes at times. And this article talks about how there's a culture within education that instinctively perceives these disabled kids as less, and it basically insinuates that mainstream schools are trying to get rid of their disabled students. And it's all the blame is being placed on the teachers, that the teachers perceive these kids to be less, and the teachers aren't doing the right thing, and the teachers are doing this, and the teachers are doing that. I violently disagree with this. And I've repeated a number of times, and it's been an ongoing theme throughout a lot of these articles, is it's only focusing on the single story. It's failing to really understand that mainstream teachers, they have big class sizes, they have excessive workloads, they have minimal funding, and they work within communities where increasingly the value of teachers are being diminished. We all know, and we've all heard that same argument, that we have it easy, the teachers have it easy, we don't work very hard because of the holidays we get. The fact is, for the most part, I pity students whose parents force them into mainstream schools. In my experience, kids that have, disabled kids that have been mainstreamed, for the most part, they know they're different. They know that they're excluded from NAPLAN testing. They know that they're different from people around them, and their confidence is never very high because they know they're at the bottom of the class. And the fact is, these students are treated differently by their peers, and so socially they don't evolve the way that we would hope them to. And I remember this was I remember this exactly because I remember talking to a student a few years ago, and he was a little bit upset because he had built a sandcastle and this kid had wandered straight through and knocked it over. And I said, "Buddy, what's going on here?" And he said, yeah, that's so-and-so. He smashes our castles all the time, but you know what? He's a bit special, so, And I really feel like that kind of mentality does these disabled kids, quite a disservice. There's no ownership over that behaviour for him. I think that the issue here isn't necessarily a cultural one within the educators. I think the cultural shift needs to happen with parents. As you can see in the page that I've got up here, there's... Oh, I better... Hold on, I'm going to scrub that out right there because we shouldn't have naughty words in my assignment. I didn't see that. the cultural shift needs to change with a lot of the parents. If you have a look here, this is a really good idea of what the media is portraying people with a disability, how they're portraying them, and it's not necessarily very pretty. But I want to focus, I guess, on the fact that so many parents somehow think that going into a special education setting, that their children are going to receive less of an education. And I think that's something that really needs to change. I also feel like parents who perhaps are in a bit of denial about their kids' disability, that they need to stand up and acknowledge that. Or parents that send their kids to mainstream school, for their social needs. We hear that a lot. Oh yeah, we're gonna keep Julian rolling because we want to attend to the social needs. And I wonder what's going on here, because my question is, why wouldn't you want to go to a special school? At my school, we have physiotherapists, we have occupational therapists and speech therapists. We have writing developabilities, fitness workers, allied health assistants. We have small class sizes. We have individualised learning plans, specialised therapy playgrounds. We have the time and the capacity to teach social awareness. Why wouldn't you want your kids to attend a school like ours? Perhaps, as well as the parents, maybe some more responsibility needs to be placed with the education department, who actively discourages students from attending mainstream schools. Or perhaps, on a departmental level, we need to have a more proactive rather than reactive response to those kids who are at risk per se. For example, isn't it possible, or wouldn't it be fantastic for those kids who are borderline, with an IQ of say 71 or 72? Wouldn't it be cool to have them, give them the option to attend a special school for perhaps their first 2 years of school, get that early intervention to arm them with the tools to be able to, cope really well in a mainstream setting? Before I continue, please apologise for this little bit. I had to black out over here. There was a swear word on my picture that I didn't realise when I took it. Anyway, back to the article. I think that the issue here isn't necessarily a cultural one within the education, within educators and teachers. I think perhaps the cultural shift needs to lie with the parents more. I wonder why some of these parents are forcing their kids into mainstream school, and I wonder if the conversation needs to be had as if that is the right place for them. I wonder, that if you have a look at all the memes that I've got here, it's no wonder that special schools are seen to be less, that they're less valued, or that perhaps the misconception out there is that they're not going to get the education at a special school that they would at a mainstream. And it's hard. You can easily understand how that's possible when you see some of the publicity and the memes that go around when on the issue. So my thing is that maybe parents need to try and see past that. Maybe those parents who are in a little bit of denial or choose to ignore that their children are struggling at school need some accountability for that. I think that parents need to have an honest think about why they're sending their kids to school, and this is in inverted marks, for their social reasons. We hear that a lot. And my question is, why do people not think, we really need to promote the positivity that can happen in a special school and how good an education they can have there? My question is, why wouldn't you want to attend a special school? At my particular school, we have physiotherapists, we have occupational therapists, speech therapists. Our kids go to writing develops abilities. We have fitness staff, we have allied health assistants, we have small class sizes, individualised learning plans, specialised therapy playgrounds. We have the time and the capacity to teach social awareness. Why wouldn't you want your kids to have access to such great services? Perhaps the other thing to think of is maybe more responsibility needs to be placed with the education department. I've been to a seminar where they have actually actively discouraged parents from sending their kids to a special school and wanting to get them into mainstream school, and I wonder why that's the case. But I also think that maybe we need to be a bit more proactive and maybe widen the umbrella a little bit to help some other kids. We all know of those kids that tested at 71 that missed out on being able to come to special school and they struggle through their whole school life. I wonder if you open up that umbrella, maybe if the education department allowed kids to attend maybe their first 2 years of schooling in a special setting if they were on the border, if they were borderline, whether they'd make it or not. Give them 2 years of really intensive early intervention, and let us give them the skills to be able to survive, in those bigger schools and in a mainstream setting. I think a proactive rather than reactive response would be much better. Before we get started again, I just want to reiterate, I have sought permission from all of the parents of these photos, because these are my kids. These are kids from my room here. I want to finish this just by saying that that the article epitomises the downside of the single story. It's just pointing the finger at the teachers and accusing them of not doing their jobs, whereas there is absolutely no restraint, I guess, or no understanding of what constraints are put in place and what barriers are there to stop teachers being able to succeed. And I'm going to finish off by showing you some of the wonderful things that do happen in a special school setting. You know, we have a strong literacy and numeracy focus, we have therapy programs, we have sensory programs, and we have all sorts of great stuff. So I think there should be more people advocating for special schools rather than just pointing their finger at mainstream schools that are having those honest conversations with the parents. I think the real issue at hand here is the single story once again. It's very easy to point your finger at the teachers and schools and say it's all your fault, things aren't going right. But the single story here suggests that maybe, you know, the wider setting isn't being taken into account. Maybe people aren't taking into account the constraints that are placed around teachers that makes, you know, being able to cater for them all at times virtually impossible. What I wish people would see is the photos I've got right here. This is what happened. This is my classroom. And once again, let me tell you that I do have permission to use these photos from all my parents. What you can see here is a strong literacy focus. There's lots of reading and writing that goes on in my room. You know, there's a lot of work on number and maths. These are grade 1 and 2 kids who can count numbers to 1,000. But we do encompass sensory programs. We work on trying to help have a well-rounded whole individual. So I guess the thing to remember here is let's not see the single story. You know, let's not point the finger before we look at the whole story.